Hello everyone, my name is Caitlin Penny, and anyone who knows me will know that I am a massive fan of Formula One racing and car racing as a whole. I'm actually a motorsport commentator myself. I commentate mainly simulator racing events, although I have done some real life racing events in the past. And I've actually never missed a Grand Prix in my entire life, apparently even as a baby. So I would like to consider myself a little bit of an expert. What people don't tend to know about me is that I also get quite strong ASMR. I used to be ashamed of it because some people see it as a little bit weird, although to be honest, nowadays I don't really see the point of being ashamed in it, so I'm just not anymore. But anyway, I recently came across a video. In fact, just a few minutes ago, I came across this video because it hasn't been up online for long, and it is Gibi ASMR, who is a wonderful creator, I've got to say, explaining Formula One. In fact, just a disclaimer about this video, of course. She fully admits that she has no idea what she's talking about. That is why the title of the video is explaining things I have no idea about. And that makes it absolutely perfect for a fact-checking video, because I feel like, hopefully, GB knows that she is not making much sense in this video, and she's not going to be too offended with me picking apart every little detail that she says and explaining where she goes wrong. So let's have a listen to what she has to say about Formula One racing, and I'll be stopping it and explaining various things that I have a comment on as the video goes on.
Last one we'll do is Formula One racing. Formula One racing is NASCAR's cooler older brother.
Okay, so obviously Formula One is cooler than NASCAR, that much is true, so we're off on a good start. Formula One is actually NASCAR's cooler younger brother. NASCAR, the official Cup Series, started in 1948, and Formula One started in 1950, although the regulations were technically finalised in 1948 as well. With that being said, Grand Prix racing is actually older than stock car racing, so if you take the actual sports that both categories belong to. Stock car racing actually started during Prohibition, when criminals would create cars that were fast and modified in order to outrun law enforcement. These, of course, known as the moonshine runners. Grand Prix racing started slightly earlier than that. The first official Grand Prix was the French Grand Prix in 1905. Although back in those days there was less kind of regulation over what kind of cars could enter into Grand Prix, and of course the Formula One regulations were standardized in 1948, as I previously said.
NASCAR is American, where Formula One is everyone's allowed except for Americans.
I love that because now, oh, and that is a funny face to stop it on. No, I love that because nowadays, of course, there are no American Formula One drivers. The last one was Alexander Rossi in 2015. Obviously, Americans are allowed in Formula One. It's just that naturally the progression of the American career ladder tends to mean that drivers who have the talent to be a professional racing driver in America end up going to NASCAR or indeed to IndyCar. But actually, Americans have raced in Formula One in the past. There have actually been two American world champions, Phil Hill in 1961 and Mario Andretti in 1978. And I very much suspect that we haven't seen the last of American Formula One drivers or world champions.
And the reason that Formula One racing was made was because NASCAR wouldn't let international drivers come in and race.
There's no official rule in NASCAR about international drivers not being able to enter, and in fact, international drivers quite regularly do, although of course they are a vast minority or a tiny minority, I suppose I should say, in American racing.
So what they did was they tried to make NASCAR 2, and NASCAR said, no, you can't do that.
Obviously, this isn't true.
But what somebody discovered, a Swedish racer actually discovered that NASCAR was working on a project called Formula 2.
Formula 2 actually exists, but it's not some kind of NASCAR secret project, as GB is implying here. Formula 2 is, unsurprisingly, the junior category, the kind of Division 2 of Formula 1. NASCAR also has a Division 2, it's called the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and for Formula 1 that is Formula 2.
So they took that name and named it Formula 1. And then they sued NASCAR for taking their name, Formula 2. It was a huge debacle. It was really dramatic. We all thought that NASCAR was gone forever.
Oh no.
But they survived. And the difference between NASCAR and Formula 1, NASCAR you do 300 laps. Formula 1, you do 450 laps.
The longest Formula 1 race in terms of laps is actually 78 laps. NASCAR races can often go up to 300 laps, sometimes even over that, depending on the circuit they're at. NASCAR does really long races in terms of both distance and time. Some of them are 500 miles plus. You know, the Daytona 500, for example, is named that because it's 500 miles long. And these days, sometimes it's over that, now that they've added in the overtime rules and complicated things like that, which I'm not going to get into right now. Formula 1 races are 310 kilometers, or just over that. So it's the lap over 310 kilometers, except for the Monaco Grand Prix, because that course is so slow that they've actually decided to shorten the overall distance of the race. NASCAR races tend to end up being about double the length of Formula 1 races in terms of time, and they can be maybe 4 times as long in terms of the actual time it takes to complete the race. But anyway, there's never been a Formula 1 race that's been 450 laps long. That's I believe the maximum was 100 laps back in the day when they used to do 100 laps for the Monaco Grand Prix.
And the cars are much sleeker, much thinner, much faster.
I'm actually not sure that Formula 1 cars are thinner than NASCARs anymore. They certainly used to be, but have you seen how wide they are nowadays? It's almost ridiculous, actually. They are faster, though. Formula 1 cars have a higher top speed than NASCAR, because NASCARs are limited now to something like 202, 203 miles per hour. Formula 1 cars can go 215, sometimes upwards of that. And in the corners as well, Formula 1 cars have an insane advantage over NASCAR. Due to their increased front wing, rear wing downforce, and the ground effect that comes from the skirts and the underfloor of the car as well.
There are way more accidents. In fact, that's all I ever see about Formula 1 racing.
There are actually far more accidents in NASCAR. In fact, NASCAR has a ridiculous number of accidents. So it almost seems to me as if the rules of NASCAR are based around making more accidents. It's really quite ridiculous. In Formula 1, accidents are relatively rare. You tend to get about 1 per race. On average, maybe there's 1 or 2 in practice as well. Oh, sorry, got the hiccups there. The reason that GB has probably only seen accidents from Formula 1 is because there have been some pretty big ones, and those big ones tend to be circled around the media, and they tend to get all of the attention. So, unfortunately, there are a lot of people who just know racing for its crashes. For example, NASCAR fans. Sorry, not sorry.
That's really the only thing I see about it. And so when I went to Formula 1 school,
No such thing.
I was expecting it to be really hard. And it was. It was hard. But most of it is just automatic. And really what you need to do for Formula 1 racing is you just need to kind of bulk up the upper shoulders.
I mean, less the upper shoulders and more kind of the neck. It's the neck that takes a real beating in a Formula 1 car. Because if you imagine the G-forces, when you're cornering at such high speed, your helmet and your head, which is of course the heaviest part of your body, is trying to kind of fly off to the side. So a lot of drivers really train up their neck and just make it thicker and thicker. If you look up a Formula 1 driver, any Formula 1 driver, you know, Kimi Räikkönen, Valtteri Bottas, etc., you'll notice that their neck is freaking massive. It is insane. Also, drivers tend to train up their mentality as well. Most of Formula One, I'd say, is probably a mental workout. You've got a lot going on in Formula One cars. GB's along the right lines when she says that a lot is automatic because there is a lot of electronics and a lot of automatic systems in a Formula One car. But to be able to operate those and memorize everything that could go wrong and what to do in those situations and everything like that, Formula One drivers have to do an intense amount of research, an intense amount of technical. They have to have an intense amount of technical knowledge, and really that tends to be what drivers work on from a health point of view. They need to focus on their mental health, keeping themselves in the right kind of mindset for racing. Although they do also have to go over nutrition with their trainers and all of that malarkey.
And it's more about controlling the wheel than anything else.
Always a good thing to do.
Obviously you have to steer and swerve and like make sure you don't hit anyone, but there's like a good balance in the Formula One cars that the NASCAR cars don't really have.
I think she's implying that it's easy. Yeah, okay, Formula One cars do have more innate grip, mechanical grip and aerodynamic grip than NASCARs do. Although that very much does not make them easy to drive. They are definitely easier than they have been in the past, but the fact is, the pure speed that Formula One cars can go and how close they get to the barriers and the curbs and everything like that makes them insanely tricky to drive. I mean, I struggle even on a simulator to control a Formula One car, and there you have even more of the systems automated than in the real deal. So I can't imagine the pure difficulty or the pure ability that it takes to drive a Formula One car at its maximum.
And there's races every week. They're on Fridays.
I wish. No, no. There are 23 Formula One races on next year's calendar. That, of course, means that there is not one every week. And they don't run on Fridays. They used to run on Saturdays from time to time, although that was back in the really early days. Nowadays, they always run on Sunday, the main Grand Prix, that is. There are sometimes sprint races on Saturday, although that's controversial. Anyway, the main Grand Prix run on Sunday and have done ever since the start, with the exception of a few.
Formula One races every Friday. There's different drivers that are selected to be in it. There's about, I would say, 300 drivers.
You can tell by the look on her face that she knows this isn't true. Okay, so the maximum number of drivers allowed in a Grand Prix is actually 26, according to the regulations. Although this hasn't happened for a very long time. I think the last time they had the full 26 was in the 90s, the early 90s at that. Nowadays, there tend to be 20 drivers in a Grand Prix, as there are 10 teams, and each team nominates 2 drivers to take part in the Grand Prix. Usually, those drivers are the same throughout the full year, although they can mix and, they can swap about their drivers, bring in substitutes, reserves, things like that midway through the year. But anyway, yeah, so 20 drivers is the short answer there, with a maximum possible of 26.
In Formula One racing, otherwise you have to get on the wait list, and you have to do kind of like underground Formula One racing.
There is kind of, I mean, there's junior categories to Formula One. So younger drivers tend to come through karting, that's go-karting, and then of course you go up to Formula 4, Formula 3, Formula 2, Formula 1. You could also go an alternative route. You've got the Formula Regionals, you've got your Formula, back in the day you had the Formula Renault, although that's defunct now. You've got Formula Ford, you've got, yeah, there's a whole bunch of different kind of junior categories, although it mainly follows the kind of hierarchy of 1, 2, 3, 4. There is also Formula 5, kind of. There's a Danish championship that claims to have a Formula 5 class, although those are very much based on kind of Formula V, Formula Ford style cars, and I don't think it's actually recognised by wider governing bodies as a true Formula 5?
Formula 3, because they couldn't take Formula 2 back from NASCAR. And then if you're good enough at
Formula 3 and Formula 2 both exist.
Formula 3, you get bumped up to Formula 1.
Kind of.
And the formula they're referring to was actually taken, again, from NASCAR's Formula 2. And it was the formula of cars and money.
Okay, the formula that's referred to in the name Formula One is actually the set of regulations that the FIA, the Federation International Automobile, posts every year, or releases every year, I suppose I should say. And these regulations determine how big the car should be, where different parts of the car should be in relation to other parts, how big an engine you're supposed to have, the shape of the tires, I mean round I hope, but anyway, even the way that the car's made, and all of that put together is the formula in Formula One.
Equaling more money. So Formula 1 is just cars.
There's a heck of a lot of money in Formula One.
Simple concept. All right. Well, that is all the time I have today.
Thank you very much, Gibi. I would like to say again, I'm not making fun of Gibi here. I know that different people have different levels of expertise in different things. And as the video says in the title, Gibi does not have much knowledge about Formula One. That's okay. That's totally okay. She is probably an expert in other things that I have no clue at all about. And I've got to say, I'm a big fan of Gibi, and I think that what she does is fantastic. And if you are watching this, Gibi, thank you very much for everything you do. Anyway, thank you all for watching this slightly unusual video on my channel. I've never done anything like this before, although if you would like me to do it again... God, my hair's a mess. Sorry, I've just noticed that in my other screen there. Oh my god. Anyway, if you would like me to do something like this again, then please let me know. And I guess if you have a suggestion for something that I should react to or fact check or anything like that, then I would be absolutely willing to hear it. But as I said before, thank you all for watching this video, and I will see you next time. Goodbye!